Okay, it's connected. All right, so we should be live on Facebook and YouTube. Let me just double check. Facebook that we're live. Thank you so much for being here today, Pam.
Oh, I'm excited. I love this kind of stuff.
I know it's.
I don't see it live yet
I
on
don't
Facebook.
either. Let me try one more thing. So this is like the third time I've done this, so you would think that
So good.
you would think that I would have it down by now. Here we go. Video. Oh, streaming. Going live. Sorry.
Okay.
Okay, my URL. I'm just checking on Facebook to make sure I have it right. Yeah, okay. So it should, in theory, should. Well, I know we're live on YouTube.
Okay. Well, hello, YouTube world.
Donald says hello from YouTube. So hello, Donald. We're going to talk in just a minute, I promise. I'm trying to figure out. See, it says I'm connected. Stream setup. Let's see. It says happening now. Automatically go live. Technical difficulties.
Right.
I feel like Rodney and Karen.
Yeah, I know.
Okay.
Right?
There. Oh, I think it's. I think it might be. There. Oh.
Yeah.
Okay, I muted it, so we're good. Okay, it's live on Facebook. I see it.
Oh, cool. Okay, I'm going to agree. I want to share it, so I want to get back on here.
Well, yeah, thank you so much. We're going to be talking a little bit about transitioning our pets away from kibble. And if you're not familiar with the word kibble, which my husband constantly reminds me that some people just don't know what that is, it's that dry food that you get in a bag off of a shelf in a pet store or mail order from places that we probably shouldn't say out loud. Yeah. So thank you for being here. I do see that Donald is here, and I appreciate you commenting. If you are watching, whether you're watching on YouTube or Facebook, or even if you're watching a replay of this video after, let us know that you're here. Let us know about you and your pets. Let's see. Yeah, so kibble. Kibble. I know you're sharing. You're sharing away.
I'm trying to share away.
So, okay. Well, I think I've got through all the which is awesome.
Yay.
Pam, if y'all are familiar with Pam, she is a holistic health practitioner and she specializes in holistic health for pets. She is also your Reiki certified, correct?
I am, and I'm board certified holistic health practitioner with the American Association of Drugless Practitioners.
So Pam is highly accredited, and she knows a heck of a lot and helps a lot of people and their pets. She does specialize in felines, but she helps dogs too. So, you know, I talk a lot about, I try to even things out and talk about dogs and talk about cats, but I do tend to get more. Pam is here to help, especially when it comes to our cats. But So really, we wanted to talk about why this topic is so important to us and why it should be so important to you. And I do just want to acknowledge, Donald, that you said you have a bunch of questions on my YouTube, and I am trying to get to all of my YouTube comments. I apologize. I know you were asking about raw bones, and I'm working on doing a video on that for you. So I'm not ignoring any comments. There's a lot of them, and I try to get to as many as just so you know. And I appreciate you being here with us live today. And I see Dee Dee is here. Hello, how are you? I see your beautiful kitty in your profile picture. So do you want to start with why we should be getting away from kibble?
I think it's important to know what kibble is, what it's made of, how it's made, because that's when the light bulbs start to go off in people's minds when they realize, oh my gosh, are you kidding me? It's important. Let's just take a few minutes and let's talk about what exactly is kibble. Um, it was developed for convenience after, like early, like no, I guess it was late 1800s or something in the industrial age. It was people used to feed their dogs and cats scraps, the table scraps of real food. And
Yeah.
then the industrial age came along and everything became mechanized and mechanical and people went to work and so they needed convenience and we needed stuff that you could just put on a shelf, like especially World War II, it's like
Yeah.
we just want to put everything in a bag and store it on a shelf so it can be utilized and free and convenient, not free, but ease and convenience and things like that. And so we got conditioned as pet parents over the decades that was just normal food, It never stopped to, we know it's never occurred to us that, well, why don't we eat stuff like that? Our food doesn't look like that, So yes, the junk food
Well,
that we
maybe
do eat.
Captain Crunch.
Yeah, maybe Captain Crunch. But typically that's not 3 square meals a day every day of our life. We're eating other things too. So let's talk about how kibble is made. Kibble is made through a rendering process, and I wish I had pictures to show you how gross it is. But if you can think of in your mind a humongous vat. You're in a big, industrial type warehouse and you've got this huge vat and they are just pouring in all sorts of things. 4D meats are considered staple food for rendering ingredients, and they include dead, diseased, dying, and disabled animals. So that is okay by AFCO and the FDA to put in 4D meats into rendered food products. They literally will take leftover grocery store expired foods that are still in the styrofoam packages. They do not open things up. They will take, expired breads and everything in just plastic wrap and throw it into this big pot of stew, basically. And they just throw all the stuff in there, and all the other ingredients that they have to throw in, like the corn and the wheat and the soy products and everything else that makes it all stick together. And so this vat is cooking this sloppy mixture at very, very high temperatures for a long period of time because they have to kill off all the bacteria. Think about it. It's probably very toxic. So this high heat chemical, this high heat process creates this chemical byproducts called AGEs, which is advanced glycation end products. And technically they're acrylamides and heterocyclic amines, and they are known carcinogens. So when you heat something up high enough, it's going to have a byproduct effect that happens chemically. And so this is how these Maillard reactions or these advanced glycation end products actually come to be in the food. And this is not just for pet food. This happens with people products, anything that's high heat processed, like our chips and breads and things like that have the crust or the the toasted look on it. That's that same kind of reaction. So the other thing that they so that's the whole rendering process, and then they take this mixture and they pour it through the little extruders that create the shapes, that form the kibble, and then it comes out in their little shapes, and they cool and dry, and then they come along and they spray chemical palliatives on the product, because if you were any smart animal, you would just look at that and go, well, what is that?
That's not food.
That's not food. What do you want me to eat that? Are you crazy? But they spray these chemical additives on top of it, and fats, by the way, that make it palatable. So they, it's like taste enhancers, flavor enhancers, so that the pets want to eat them. But if they didn't have those flavor enhancers on there, I guarantee you they probably wouldn't even look at them, So then they put in preservatives into the foods, that so that they can stay stable on the shelf for up to 25 years, which is a really long time to have food on the shelf. But that's why they put so many preservatives, or so much preservatives, in the bags, because they want to make sure it can last that long. And some of these preservatives are very toxic, but yet they are still allowed in pet food. And some of those might be BHA, BHT, propyl gallate, which you will see on labels sometimes, sodium nitrites and nitrates, which I see in foods, deli meats and things like that. So you really got to read your labels. Ethoxyquin is one, TBHQ is one, and these are all petroleum-based derivatives. So they're putting all these petroleum-based preservatives into the food to preserve it for up to 25 years. And then let's talk about the bags that they put these things in. The liners contain PCBs and phthalates, and these are known endocrine disruptors, and they cause cancer. So your food, that's not really food, it's feed, is sitting in a bag lined with cancer-causing, products and hormone disruptors. And then when you think about the compositional makeup, like the guaranteed analysis of the feed, I'm gonna call it feed because it's really feed grade ingredients. It's not food grade. The percentage of starch that's used to create kibble in the recipe has to be so high. Why? Because that's what makes it stick together and go through the extruding process and dry into little cute shapes and pieces, right? Mm-hmm. If they didn't have a starch to stick together, they wouldn't stick together. It would just be powder, whatever. So the amount of sugar, and I label it as sugar because the ingredients that are used in the for the starches to hold the stuff together are metabolized as sugar. So the body recognizes them as sugar, which is very inflammatory. It can create a lot of metabolic damage at the cellular level, and chronic inflammation and high amounts of sugar in animals that are not designed, number one, to eat those kind of starches, can cause a lot of problems. And that's why, in my opinion, that's why we see this huge influx of cancers and lymphomas and diabetes and obesity and pancreatitis and IBD, IBS, any kind of itis issue. Pretty much it's an inflammation issue. So it's not a surprise when you see how many pets are eating the dry foods that have begun to have disease markers rise up and have all these horrible conditions. They go home with diagnosis, and the pet parent's like, okay, great, now my cat has diabetes, and I've got to do this, and it's not to say that every pet will develop all these diseases. Sometimes it's genetic. Sometimes you don't know what's going on until later in life, because their bodies they may look like they're doing okay from the outside for a while, but eventually their bodies it catches up to them.
I think
And
that's
they might,
especially true in cats.
yes, yes, especially like the kidneys. I mean, the kidneys
Mm-hmm.
wear out, in older cats that have eaten dry food diets, and even some not so old cats, like middle-aged cats, because they're in a constant state of dehydration. So, and then the other couple other things is the fats that they put on these products, this kibble in the bag, they do turn rancid. So the minute you open that bag, you are on a time ticker. So typically within 3 weeks, the product in that bag will start to turn well, it will become rancid. The clock starts ticking the minute you open the bag. So that's why buying these huge bags of dry food is really doing a disservice to your pet, because if they can't eat it within about 3 weeks, your risk of having rancid food and food issues, digestive issues, and upsets starts to really increase after 3 weeks. So it's better, it's not better for your wallet, but it's better for your pet if you would buy the smaller bags if you really. And then the final thought that most people don't really consider is the genetically modified ingredients that are put into so many products that are kibble, feed grade kibble foods, because the number one type of ingredient that they use for a lot of these foods are corn, wheat, soy, sugar beets, legumes. And so these are not only are they genetically modified, especially the corn, wheat, and soy kind of in the sugar beets, but the legumes, your peas, your garbanzo beans, your lentils, your navy beans, look at your labels, because those are some of the most highly sprayed crops of glyphosate, including corn and soy. That's why they make them genetically modified, so that they can spray the heck out of them with glyphosate, which is horribly, horribly toxic and has links to cancer and lymphoma and all this. It's destroying our soil, it's destroying our food supply, and it is in everything. So you guarantee if you have corn, wheat, soy, sugar, beet, any kind of like a beet pulp, any kind of a legume, there is I would say almost a 90% chance that they're going to have glyphosate in the food. And the sad part is the pet food companies are not required by law to go test their ingredients first to determine if there is glyphosate present. It's not required by law. Therefore, they just throw the stuff in, and you never know because it's not going to be on the label.
And first of all, everything you said is enough. Like, it's enough, right?
Scary.
But oh yeah, like it's enough to
Scary.
make anybody say, "Oh my gosh, really?" And that's not even like that's not even the whole picture, right?
Right.
Because then we're thinking about, well, high heat processing, where are all the nutrients coming from? So now we have to add premixes in, right, to get all the
Yes.
nutrients back in food. And then the
Those are
companies that
synthetic.
they're all and they're supposed to be testing them when they get to make sure it is what it's supposed to be, and they're supposed to be testing the end product to make sure it is what it's supposed to be, and this almost never happens. So you can only imagine when there isn't regulation in place, when they're already
Yeah.
not doing what their regulations say they're supposed to do, and then
Yeah.
there's not even regulation in place to test for things like glyphosate. That's not how, like, hands down, 100%, that's not
Yeah.
happening.
It's not happening. It's not going to
For
happen.
sure. Yeah.
The big food pet companies that use those ingredients would lose all of their. They go out of business because people don't want to buy something if it says, oh, there's a glyphosate on my pet's food. Like, heck no, I'm not buying that food.
Yeah. And just to
No.
kind of touch on what you were saying about um, starches and the high carbohydrate percentages, which we all know translates to sugars in the body. Um, I was just reading before we jumped on. So Billy was at the AFCO meeting that just happened.
Mm-hmm.
Billy
Mm-hmm.
he's
Yes.
now with Creighton Judy. And so they posted the good, the bad, and the ugly about, like, these are the three takeaways from AFCO, right? If this is all you want to know. The good is that they are trying to reform the guaranteed analysis labels, right? And they're trying to add in sugars. And I think sugars and carbohydrates, but they're trying to add that into the label. That's a good thing. And then they said the bad thing is they're changing to protein. They're changing gluten to protein. So anything that says like corn gluten meal now is going to say corn protein meal. So they're changing.
Oh my God.
And then the is, don't those two contradict each other? Right? Like, don't those two things, like, really, where are we going? Yeah, that was the good, the bad, and the ugly from this year's AFCO meeting, apparently.
Oh my gosh, I can't wait to read what Susan Thixton writes about it.
You know what? I got her email yesterday, and I haven't had time to read it yet. I've still got it sitting there unopened, so I'm like, yeah, because I really want to like dive into what she says about it. But there who may be asking, like, why me personally? Oh, and you're here. Let's making me feel sick. Okay, so Tom, who's in your profile picture, passed away. I'm so sorry. You have Salsa, Diego, and Tigger. Adorable. I hope Tigger is an orange kitty cat. Okay, and Tom died of lymphoma. I'm so sorry. But anyway, so people ask me all the time, like, you're supposed to be a dog trainer. Why do you talk about nutrition all the time? And this conversation right here, I talk about nutrition all the time because hands down, I cannot tell you how many homes I've walked into. I can almost guarantee you whatever behavioral issue you're having with your dog, there is a link to that food you're feeding. Whether it's, they get really agitated in the afternoons and evenings and they're bugging you, well, maybe it's because they're crashing because of all the carbs they've just eaten, or their behavioral issue, a symptom of some underlying medical issue, and of which we can, even though I'm not a veterinarian, we're not veterinarians, we can say with pretty darn good certainty that it's never going to hurt to improve the diet. So it can only animal with whatever you're dealing with to improve the diet. And when we look at what our pets are actually doing, they're basically like treated as dumpsters, because whatever is not fit for human consumption, whether it starts out as not fit for human or it just expires, like you were saying, and it no longer our pets are just being used as dumpsters. And how unfortunate is that people don't know that?
Well, and that's one of the reasons why Kibble got started, is because the industry, the human feed industry, had all this leftover waste, and like, what are we gonna do with all this waste? And some brilliant business person said, "Oh, we can sell it to the rendering plants, and we can use it for pet food." So again, it was all about the money. It was trying to find a use for unwanted raw materials and make money off of it, and it kind of grew into this monster, that is not. Sorry, I don't think it's regulated because the FDA does not enforce law, even though AFCO writes the laws, and they're not a regulatory agency. So to me, it's a scam on both sides, and it's a disservice to the pet parents and to the pets whose pet parents are thinking that they're doing the right thing and feeding them something that's labeled as healthy or whatever, when in reality it's anything but. So one of the reasons we wanted to come on today and talk about this is because we want to give you guys some hope. We want to just leave you as a downer, because the raw truth is Kibble is really, really bad, and it's very it's not healthy. It does not benefit, the health of your pet. It certainly doesn't promote the health of your pet. And I used to feed kibble, so I label myself as one of those people who did that for years because that's what my parents did. So that's what I did. I learned that, and I thought that was normal until I figured out that I could do better. And even though I was buying an expensive, organic, high quality dry food, you still have the issue of the high heat processing and the AGEs, the advanced glycation end products. You still have the synthetic preservatives in there. You still have the BPEs and the phthalates from the bags. You can't get away from. There is no such thing as a healthy kibble. I mean,
No.
it's just doesn't exist because of what it is, you know.
Yeah.
So, and I
Well,
can tell
and
you personal experience that my cat who had like a feline, they call it a kitty bronchitis, and he was on dry food diets, for the first few years of his life because that's what I fed at the time, and he was just coughing, coughing, coughing. It wasn't asthma. We got the X-rays, and they're looking at me. They're showing me the X-rays, and I could see his lungs, and I'm like, well, what's the cure? How do you fix that? And the doctor said to me, oh, there is no cure. We just have to manage it. And I thought to myself, there is a cure. You just don't know what it is. And so that was my mindset of there's always a cure. You just have to go find it. And so that was about the time I think that for something happened, and I think that was about the time that I took the kibble away and I threw it out. Or maybe I think we had just lost a cat who died from kidney disease, and I think that was the trigger. And I decided, you know what? I'm done with this. I'm throwing it. I threw the bag of kibble away. We went to wet food strictly. And within 3 days, my cat who had kitty bronchitis that couldn't be cured, his condition improved 95%. 95%. So I'm here to tell you that it has more of a damaging effect, and that was on his lungs because of all the dust and probably mycotoxins and molds from the product in a bag that because I bought the large size, I wanted to be value size because it would
yeah.
last me longer, and I had like 6 cats, right? So I was not doing them a service at all. I was doing them a disservice. But it showed me how quickly, how powerful it was to just change their diet and to see him go from cough, cough, cough to like nothing. I was floored, and that's when I was convinced that there's more to there's more power in changing the diet than we really realize.
Oh,
You can see
for
results
sure.
so quickly, so
And
quickly.
the same is true for us. And I think we want to kind of segue into what we can do instead of kibble, but really quickly, I just want to kind of throw this for all of you that are watching. When we compare kibble cereal for humans, like that's basically like
Mhm.
the best way to compare human terms. And frost or not frosted, but the oh, what are they?
Captain Crunch,
The not
Cheerios,
I want to say
Cheerios.
frosted, but the frosted flakes without the frosting.
Oh, like the wheat bran or whatever, something like that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
when Kellogg first came out with that, it was very intentional to decrease the male libido. So we know that these cereals are very intentionally made to alter our hormones.
Mm.
And the same thing is happening with, feeding our pets kibble. They're just getting worse from the get-go.
Mhm.
um,
Absolutely.
so just to kind of like put things in comparison, I think a lot of compare it to themselves to realize like how big of an impact it really is to their pets.
Hmm.
And like it was very intentionally done to us as humans, and I really wonder how intentional it is as well, because it's not a coincidence that their health is deteriorating as just a rapid of a pace as our health is deteriorating, right? Like it's just pills, 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 and all the side effects for the pills. There are more pills for, and
Yep.
I don't think it's a coincidence. But that's also really, really empowering to know that, because you can do something about it once you know that.
Exactly.
So what to do instead, right?
Yeah.
Is to, I mean, ideally, we would love for our dogs and our cats to eat a completely balanced, which that's the topic for another day, but balanced, species appropriate raw food diet. That would
Right.
be ideal. Um, but there are steps to get there, and even if you make one step and you don't get all the way there, that's okay too. You're doing better.
Yes.
So I know for cats specifically, if we can just get them on a higher quality wet food, I
Hmm.
mean that can make a huge, right? Just adding in that moisture can make
Yeah,
such
and
a huge difference.
Dr. Karen Becker was saying in one interview like a while ago that I listened to, she says even the worst wet food is better than dry food. So if all you can afford to feed is a grocery store quality wet food, that is so much better in the long term because of the hydration and the moisture that you're getting in that food instead of a dry food. So yes, we unfortunately the high quality good food costs more, you know, but you just have to make adjustments where you can. And even if you change 20% of the bowl, just 20% of the bowl, if you can improve that much, it can make a world of difference in your pet.
Yeah, absolutely. I know a lot of people start with like maybe one meal a day, right?
Yeah.
So first and foremost, we need for our cats specifically. I think it's harder for our cat. When I said this to Julianne, she was like, "Come on, Jessica," but I was like, "It's just cat harder to me. Cats are harder," and I never would have said this 10 years ago because I was a cat person, and I'm not a cat person now. I still absolutely love my cats, but having lived with dogs long enough,
Hmm.
like dogs are easier.
Dogs eat anything. Most dogs eat anything. Cats, on the other hand, it has to be their idea. You know,
Yeah.
they have to decide that that's what they want to do. But yeah, and some that let me back up. There is such a thing as as a sugar addict in cats. We call it a kibble addict. It's not that they are addicted to the kibble; it's the sugar, it's the chemical palliatives that are sprayed on those products. Um, One of the things that I've had tremendous success with energetically when I work with clients is clearing sugar addictions. So when I clear sugar addictions, that's associated with the taste bud and the gustatory centers of the brain and the opioid receptor side of the brain, that like truncates that cord, if you would, if you need a visual. It's like that, you know, it severs that addiction, and it opens their mind up and their taste buds up to being open to wet food. Then, you know, it sure makes the transition so much faster than if you don't. So don't despair if you can't do that particular clearing of sugar addiction. It's just going to take longer, you know, for
Yeah.
sure.
And even with some, and even with dogs, it can be a slow transition, but even adding in a bone broth to
Hmm.
the kibble a little bit can, I think, help with that.
The palate.
Yeah,
Hmm. Hmm.
yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, like you were saying, even just changing 20% of that bowl, and or doing, or if your cat will let you, generally your dogs will let you, but I actually find for most healthy puppies and dogs, um, I tend to prefer like a, like, here you go, here's your raw food. And most dogs are like, they just gobble it right on up and they're good to go. And you can go ahead and get that couple of days of, you might have some diarrhea, and some dogs will have a detox, and it really depends on the dog, but go ahead and get it done, get it cleared out
Right.
with healthy dogs and puppies. But Um, you know, if you
And
gotta do it slower,
goat's milk can help that transition too. Just adding a little goat's milk because of the probiotics and the gut flora in the goat's milk helps
mm-hmm.
kind of prepare the gut. So that's a good, I like that. It's called turkey.
Yeah, now I don't think that is appropriate for cats, though, I will say.
You know, it
um,
depends on the cat, like you said. If you guys have if you're adopting a small kitten, a baby, 8, 12 weeks old, that is the ideal time to switch them to raw food because they go easily. When we first adopted Aylin, she was the baby. She came home with a bag, excuse me, of kibble from the people we got her from, and I just threw the kibble in the trash. I'm like, you're not eating that anymore. You're going to raw food, and she ate. I fixed raw food for dinner for everybody and put hers on the floor, and she gobbled that thing up. She didn't even blink, and I guarantee you she did not miss her dry food. So, if you've got a younger cat, transition so easy. So don't miss that opportunity.
yeah, but transitioning, I think, slower for adult cats is ideal, and one of the reasons, and you can talk about this some more, is that it's never okay to fast a cat,
Correct.
right?
Yeah.
Like cats are not dogs.
They're martyrs. They're martyrs. They will just not eat.
Strike.
If
Yeah.
they will go on a food strike, they and risk fatty liver disease because they're not eating within 24 48 hours. Some cats can go longer than that, but you just don't want to cross that line. Um, so yeah, if you have a martyr in your home, just know that it's going to take longer. And I told one of the biggest mistakes that people make who are trying to transition kibble, their cat from kibble to wet food or a better diet, is they still leave the kibble out all day. They have an all day buffet. And so if your cat knows that it's still got its, favorite all day buffet over here, and you're going to feed them wet food at dinner, they're like, nah, I'm just going to eat my buffet throughout the day, and I'm not going to be hungry by the time when you get to feed me my wet food that I really don't like that much. I'd rather have this. So you've got to pick up the all day buffet, and you've got to put your cats on a schedule, on a feeding schedule, because food will be your friend, you know hunger will be let me rephrase, hunger will be your friend because your cat's hungry, and so they're more apt to eat something if they haven't been grazing all day long.
Mm-hmm.
Do you find that to work as well?
Yeah, that I think that's true for both dogs and cats. That
Yeah.
is the first thing I do when I go into see bowls down. I'm like, nope, those come up.
Yeah.
Bowls are not meant to sit on the floor. Like, no.
Correct.
And for my dogs, well, this can be said of cats too. I don't even love feeding out of bowls. It's just not my preference. I like, if at all possible, like I like just a wooden cutting board. That's my
Mhm.
favorite for her. My cats are a little different. I have little ceramic. They're like appetizer plates, but
Yeah.
they're plates. They're not
Yeah.
bowls
Yeah.
because of their whiskers. So,
Mhm.
but I also have the hunting feeders for them, which they don't always love. My cats are very like, yeah, we're 14, we're done. They're just
Yeah.
done. But yeah, so picking up that all day buffet for both your dogs and your cats is going to be your very first step and putting them on some
Mhm.
sort of feeding schedule. So, Kim, my dog, she gets her goat's milk for breakfast and then she gets dinner around 4, between 4 and 5, depending on how busy I am. And that's what she gets in a day. And then my cats have breakfast at like 9. They, during the winter, they get a small lunch around 3, and then they get supper around 9, and that's it. That's what they get. And so putting them
Right.
on that schedule in the summer, always get lunch. They just don't tend to eat as much in the summer as they do in the
Mhm.
winter.
Mhm.
So I kind of leave it up to them as to like how hungry are they, and my cats like if they're like okay during the middle of the then I'll give them a little bit. But yeah, putting them on some sort of schedule, definitely the very first step. And then just doing that a little bit of said for healthy dogs and puppies, I'm totally down for just cold turkey. Let's give them the raw, see what they do with it. But for cats, we definitely need to get them from kibble to wet food, yes. And then we can start, once they've fully transitioned to a wet food, then we can start adding in a little bit of raw at a time, kind of doing the same, like little by little by little. Is that how you kind of do it?
For cats who are just really good eaters in general and eat anything and everything and never complain, never turn their nose up to anything, why not just try introducing some freeze dried or rehydrated or some raw that you dehydrate, that's frozen. Take if it's a food that's like pebble sized raw, or a slider that's raw, cut it into smaller pieces and just mix it into the food they're already eating. You know, um, Adding bone broth to it to make it kind of a mush, a soup. It's a thick instead of just a patty. There, it provides flavorful.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, you just a little bit at a time. The new mixed into the old, or you could put the new, set it next to the old, so that on the same plate or the same bowl, so that they start to associate that this new stuff is food, because we are the ones that teach them what food is. It's what we feed them, so that's what they assume food is. So if we introduce something that's unfamiliar to them, they may not associate that as food right away. Some cats just really have a block to that. So, and it smells differently, it looks different, so they don't necessarily associate it as something that they should be eating with their meal. So, putting it side by side, so they start to get used to the smell, they start to get used to the texture, they start to associate it with mealtime, and then if you can mix it in, maybe some cats, they don't even need it mixed, they'll just eat it like it is, and that's like, oh, that's great. You start to add a little bit more and more of the new, and you take a little bit more and more out of the old stuff, so that you can make that transition, and you always go at the cat's pace. So if you have a little setback and they're starting to turn their nose up, well, then start to subtract the new stuff, and go back a couple steps and then start over again. So you just really have to go at the cat's pace, because like you said, you don't want them to be a food martyr and pulled out for days for their favorite, whatever. Because
Yes,
they
and
will.
they definitely will.
They will. Yeah.
They will. Okay.
They have willpower that I don't.
Right? Yes. Pam Mipa, is that? You answering? Okay, so I'm just checking comments. It looks like okay, Miss Pam, meat by meal, is that horse? Is it possible that they're using horse meat and
Meat meals typically is, well, first of all, according to Susan Dixon, meat meals, it's mystery meat. It's not
yeah.
labeled. It can be any protein. Um, Meat meals, despite what they want you to think about them, I don't believe that they are healthy, because they are processed. It's high heat again, it's dried out, it's processed through some sort of, rendering thing, and dried and packaged and preserved. So, and there's no moisture in it. So, it's, again, that's what they use for dry foods, for kibbles. Um, if something says meat meal, it could be any it could be any kind of meat. We don't know. So yes, it could be horse meat. If it's in a country where that is allowed, absolutely it could be. In some countries, that's the norm. It's not here in the States, but in other parts of the world, it is. So yeah, it could be, for sure.
I want to say in Europe it is, right?
It might. I know in some countries it is, because I have a client that lives in one that's common. Horse meat is part of pet food.
Yeah. And not too long ago, I don't know if you remember, Rachel Ray's food tested to have dog DNA in it.
Oh, right, right. Well, and that
Yeah.
goes back to, the ability for them to take pets who pass away, euthanize pets. I mean, people, we're talking, there's no limit. There's no set of ethics or morals when it comes to processed pet food. They don't care. Anything is a go. That's why they allow 4D meats in these things, in these,
Yeah.
these foods.
Mm-hmm.
They don't see anything wrong with it. I personally
And
have a huge problem with it. I don't want
yeah,
my pet eating anything like that. That's not what I would eat. If it's not something I would eat, if it's not passed, I wouldn't want them to be able to eat that.
yeah, I don't think it's appropriate, morally. Like when you know better, you do better, right? And I,
Right.
a lot of people, once they realize, think in, and they don't
Mhm.
just try to block it out, because some people will do that, you know. Um,
Yeah.
it's like that really violates a lot of, and they're like,
Yeah.
how could I love my pet so freaking much, you know? How could I do that?
Yeah.
Um, and it can be hard. Oh, go
Mhm.
ahead.
No, I was just going to say, if you're not quite sure, if you're still on the fence about it, go to Truth About Pet Food and look up some of Susan's articles about rendering plants. She has photographs taken at rendering plants that will make you throw up. This is this is it's unacceptable. You know, they have carcasses laying around, blood all over the floor, inside the plants. It's filthy. There's cockroach infestations. There's dead carcasses lying outside in the sun in containers for hours and days that are just sitting there waiting to be put into these rendering pots. Now tell me, I don't know I don't know anybody that would want to know that their pet food came from that. You
No.
know? They just
And
they don't
I have,
know. They don't
yeah, to say, like, it's always headline news when a pet food, generally that isn't a kibble, tests positive for E. coli. And these are literally the least of your concerns. Like, the least of your concerns.
right. Well, and most of the recalls, let's talk facts here. Most of the recalls that are done that happen are for dry food, are for kibble
Yeah,
foods. By
yeah,
far, the vast majority of recalls are for dry foods.
yeah. By number and by
Yeah.
weight, like the
Yes,
vast majority are
vast majority.
products, absolutely.
Yeah.
Um, it's not presented that way in the media, but that is absolutely
Right.
correct. If you go back and look at the numbers on the FDA web,
Sure.
100% true.
Yeah.
Really quick, I don't want to take up too much more of your time, but the number one, the number one reason I am always confronted with when I'm talking to people about, feeding their pets fresh foods is cost. And I
Hmm.
don't know about you, for me, I have spent tens of thousands of dollars in veterinary bills in my so far short life, hopefully short life. Many tens of thousands of dollars in vet bills, most of
Yeah.
which occurred before I knew better or as a result of me not knowing better.
Hmm.
And I personally think it's a pay now or pay later situation. And quite honestly, when you pay later, you tend to pay a whole heck of a lot more. Um, and I was telling you right before we went live, Dr. Connor Brady posted an image the other day, and I think it was something like 82% of, I think they were guide dogs in a study that they did, or I'm sorry, I think it was like 100 guide dogs in the study, and I could be totally wrong with this, but I'm going with it. That they pulled, and it was like the raw-fed dogs in the study had 82% less cost in vet bills, and I think that's really something that. while guarantee that for any animal is really, to me, like the, again, pay now, pay later. And when you pay later, it also comes with a lot of heartache,
Yeah,
for whatever your pet is going through.
stress.
So what are your feelings on that? And how do you talk to people about the cost?
Well, one of the things that I did recently is I was taking this continuing education course through Steve's Real Food. They have a raw university, and they do a lot of really good educational pieces. Go look on YouTube for Steve's Real Food. They do a lot of really good videos on educating. And cost obviously is something that always comes up. But what they have found, especially today with the cost of wet food, and the reason the cost has gone up is supply chain issues and the cost of packaging and the tins and the aluminum, that are hard to get. Prices have gone up. So yes, your wet canned cat foods products have gone up tremendously.
They
They're so
have.
much more expensive. But what they have found is when you feed a species appropriate diet, let's say raw food, for example, let's say a frozen pack. I'm gonna use small batch as an example because I love small batch. My cats eat small batch. They come in 1 ounce little frozen sliders.
Mm-hmm.
Well, when you feed a species appropriate diet, you don't have to feed as much food because their bodies absorb and utilize all of the nutrients. And so there's very little residue, there's very little waste, there's very little poop in the box the next day, you know? Versus when you're feeding the processed foods, even canned foods, their poops are larger, their bodies don't absorb as much, and so there's more left over, there's more waste. So you can feed less food, which keeps your costs down. And it's more nutritious, it's more bioavailable. Um, so it might, when you add up how much it costs per day to feed the canned food, for example, figure out how much that is per day. And then go do the math. Go look at a frozen bag of raw food, and let's say you might need 4 ounces. Again, they're going to eat less because they're using more of it. My cats don't get the the recommended label, whatever they, say
Mm-hmm.
1 ounce per pound of body weight. Holy cow! If I tried to feed 1 ounce per pound of body weight for my cats every day, number one, I'd be throwing away a ton of food because they wouldn't eat it all. Number two, if they did eat it, even a good portion of that, they'd be so fat. They would be so overweight. It's ridiculous. So you can buy the raw and feed less and save money because it's just as nutritionally appropriate, if not better for them nutritionally. Um, and it's going to last longer, you know? So you have to do the math. Go out and do the math. That's your homework, you guys, if you're watching. Go figure out how much it costs per day to feed your wet food in cans or pouches or Tetra Packs or whatever, you're using, or your kibble, okay? And then go online. You don't even have to buy anything. Go online and look at something like Small Batch and their frozen bag, or Vital Essentials and their frozen, patties or whatever it is, and look at um, how much per day that would last you versus your other food that you're currently doing, and then see how much per day that comes down to. Is it less than $1? Is it $1.50? It's probably in most cases it's going to be less a day than what you're buying in canned food.
That's really interesting that you brought up the increase of prices of everything going into, because I know, so
Yeah.
my one cat that will eat raw, he does eat small batch, and I absolutely love them as well. Um, but my other three that just absolutely refuse still to this day, the canned food that I get them is just, the price is going nuts. And I
Yeah.
will say that my day job with my husband's company, we we provide canned meats for long-term food storage, and so we buy the raw material, we buy the raw meats, we buy the cans that are specially made for us from Ball, where we have to buy the labels. And I just got a bill for our label printing this week, and I did a double take because from 6 months ago to today, the cost of us getting just the labels to put on the cans has almost tripled because of supply and demand, and the shortages of paper,
Yep.
and just trying to get paper. Like, is going crazy. So
Mm-hmm.
I saw the bill and I was like, it's almost triple what it was just 6 months ago. And I'm like, are you kidding me right now?
And that's for
And
labels. That's not even the
that's
product.
like the teeny, like, yeah, when we're figuring out the cost, like what it costs to put this product together so that we know what to price it, for our wholesalers and
Yeah.
for retail, this is such a tiny little percent in the overall cost, and that just up and up. And so it's interesting to have to think about things like, or like,
Yeah.
gosh, why is the price of everything going up? Because literally the price of everything is going up.
Right.
Everything that goes into making every single product. And when you're buying frozen raw food, there are no cans and there are no paper labels. So you have the
No.
bag, right? You've got the bag, but it's a different cost, and it's a different um,
Right.
supply, right? So
Mm-hmm.
what's in demand for food manufacturers that maybe that's not something that is inflating in the cost of a raw food, whereas with the cans of wet food, it is seriously inflating the
Yeah.
cost right now.
Tremendously so. And this is also where people may want to look into eventually get recipes for making their own homemade food. Because I have heard time and time again, if you make your own homemade recipe following a balanced diet, complete balanced diet formulated by a pet nutritionist that knows what they're doing, um, it's cheaper to make your own homemade raw food than it is to even buy commercial. So
Mm-hmm.
the whole argument is that it costs more to feed the raw and is really there's no basis for that. Not when you do the math and you do the research and you compare, overall how much. Number one, they're going to eat less, they're going to get better nutrition, they're going to have less waste, so you're not wasting your money on all that. But like you said earlier, your vet bills will go down because you're not going to be perpetuating disease conditions. Your pets are going to be healthy. One of the things that I tell my clients all the time is good nutrition is foundational to overall wellness of a pet. You know, if your nutrition is bad, your health is going to be bad. If your nutrition is great, you have a much better chance of having a highly vibrant, healthy cat for a very long life. We just have to give the body the right tools. You know what I mean? And nutrition is foundational to that always. I was listening to as a webinar today with Dr. Jean Dodds, and she even said that in her presentation. Proper nutrition is foundational to an animal's long-term health. You got to get it right,
The
because if you don't get it right,
holistic, yeah, the
if
holistic
you
act.
don't get it right, yes,
Okay.
exactly, holistic actions. Um, if you miss that one, you're going to start deviating off that path. You may not see it eventually, but man, it's gonna tank, and that's when you get into all the chronic illnesses and diseases and the extreme high vet bills and medications and surgeries, and it's a perpetual machine. So do what you can to improve your cat, your dog's diet, even if it's 20% better. Say you have to just, if you need to blend the raw or the freeze dried with the canned food, do what you got to do to improve
Mm-hmm.
the bowl as much as you can. um, do everything you can to get off the dry food, because long term there's really no benefit. There's no benefit. um, oh, and then just popped one more thing into my head. some dry foods. Go read the labels. If you have this in your house, if your dry food says powdered cellulose on there, I want you to know that that is sawdust. And sawdust, it's from trees, y'all. We don't eat sawdust. Your pets don't eat sawdust. They put it in your cats and your dog's food as filler to make them feel full. And then you have this massive poop in the box the next day that stinks to high heaven. That's part of the reason why. So again, it's waste. It's just wasteful. There's no nutritional value to that. And, you know, we want our pets to be full, but we want them to be full of proper nutrients that nourish their bodies, that is bioavailable for their bodies to utilize, and not just wasteful filler products just to put in their stomach to go through their GI tract. You know, we want it to be meaningful.
Yeah. Well, I can't tell you how many times I go into somebody's house, and they're, generally just like, oh, my dog is jumping, my dog is barking, I just want some help here, I want some help there. And I always 100% talk to them about what they're feeding their pet. And
Mm-hmm.
I, more often than not, that pet parent tells me they don't really like it, and they're not really like, how do I get them to actually eat? Like they kind of day long, and then by the end of the day they're like so hungry they eat a little bit but they're not eating, and I'm like, it's, I wouldn't want to eat it either. Like,
No.
it's what you're
Mm-mm.
feeding. And these are really well-meaning pet parents who generally
Yeah.
are, they are buying very high priced bags of kibble, and I'm
Mm-hmm.
like, let's put that money to better use.
Right. Right. Get something that your pet actually would enjoy eating
Yeah, for
and
sure.
taste it, you know?
Yeah. And I just want to say one more thing, and I apologize. We're already over an hour.
Oh, that's
Respectful of your
okay.
time. Um,
That's okay.
just to kind of a little testimonial for anybody who is out there. I have been interviewed, and we finally, I think, have found one. Finally, she was here and she was telling us it's she's a little bit older than me, and she's got a family and two dogs, and one of her dogs is a French bulldog, and she said try really really hard not to tear up, that she didn't think her dog wanted to live anymore, that it hasn't barely moved in years. It's been Apoquel for years. Its skin is just so itchy and painful. Like, her dog won't even get up to go outside to potty. She has to pick him up multiple times a day to take him outside to potty. And so I gave recommendations, including getting, an animal biome test done,
Mm-hmm.
and um, to get off of the Apoquel. And I gave her some raw food and some raw goat's milk to take home. And she told me, and she said, my dog got up and walked outside to poop for the first time in years. And I was just like in tears. Like, because
Oh
I
my God.
because she said her dog didn't want to live it. Could you imagine, like, these
Yeah.
beautiful innocent creatures, and
Yeah.
they just are so miserable. And I'm just like,
I
how
know.
amazing is that?
I know. It's just, it's incredible. It's incredible the power of nutrition, you know, not just for our pets, but for us. You know,
Mhm.
we know how
Yeah.
we feel when we go out and we eat really crappy food that's high in fat, high in salt, chemicals, you know, processed, you know, fried, whatever. Just notice how your body feels over the next 12 hours.
Yeah.
And then compared to eating something really fresh and healthy, you know, it's not processed, it's cooked right, or whatever it might be, you know, full of nutrients and living enzymes and all that good stuff. And it's such a difference in how you feel, which is incredible because our dogs and our cats feel the same way when they eat, you know, something that's not nutritionally benefiting them versus something that highly is. And it makes such a difference not only in their physical, you know, well-being, but their emotional and their spiritual well-being. It does make a difference.
It really, really does. Thank you so much, Pam, for being. I really, really appreciate you and all you do for lots of different pets and pet parents. and excited for things coming up.
Yeah.
Yeah, just let people know where they can you.
Thank you so much. This is always fun chatting with you on challenging topics. No, you guys can find me at pm@perfectlyholistic.com. That's my email, but my website is perfectlyholistic.com. That's PURRR, perfectlyholistic.com. And then we have an online boutique dedicated to cats and holistic health, and that is shop.perfectlyholistic.com. We have amazing practitioners and services for cats and dogs and pet parents. So check those services out. And it's just an honor to be able to work full time in this industry now and just to, be that light and be that help for these amazing pet parents who want to do better, and they're they're hungry for information, and they love their pets, more than their own selves. And so it's a beautiful thing to be able to be a part of that journey and to see them try, do start wherever they're starting and just make these amazing leaps and bounds and changes that obviously impact their pets for the best. So it's awesome. So yeah, come check us out and let me know if I can help you guys in any way.
Yeah, please do. And make sure to follow her on Facebook and Instagram and
Yeah.
YouTube. And I think you're on TikTok also, which
Yeah,
I don't know what's going on with
I
TikTok, but
tried.
we'll see. All
It's
right,
hard being
guys.
a one person show to get them all
Oh,
in.
yes. Tell me
Yeah.
about it. Tell me about it.
Yeah.
I just got some new glass ball jars, and they're pink, and I'm so excited. That I just had to share because not only is Pam an incredible holistic health practitioner, but I'm lucky enough to call her a friend. So I'm
Yeah.
just sharing the pink ball jars. I'm so excited. So
Oh my
that
God.
I'm gonna do.
Gotta see
I'm such
that.
a girl. They came in the mail yesterday, and my husband was like, "Don't we have this?" And I'm like, "We don't have pink glass jars." Anyway.
It's so awesome. Gotta love it. Okay.
Pam, thank you so much again. And I look
Oh, you're
forward to talking to you again soon. And guys, do make sure you're following Pam, and also make sure that you have like notifications on, because we've got some really exciting stuff coming up that you don't want to miss.
Yes, we're not telling you either. Mm-hmm. Surprises.